This video is brought to you by Clip Studio Paint. I love drawing with pen and paper. It's my favorite thing to do in the world. But here's the problem. 99% of what I do is digital. It's just part of the job. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to make drawing digitally feel like pen and paper. I'm going to be recreating all my traditional tools digitally in Clip Studio Paint so that whenever I'm drawing for work, it feels like I'm drawing for fun. First, let me introduce you to my tools. First up is the Pilot High-Tech C4. It's my desert island pen, my go-to. There are many like this, but this one is mine. I'm drawing some sample lines which I've scanned into my computer to use as reference. So I scanned my lines and now I'm going to try my best to recreate it in the custom brush engine in Clip Studio Paint. There's so many different settings in here that you can practically create any brush you can think of. The one thing I want to get right is the velocity of the pen. I want the ink to pool a little bit when I hold it still, as if the ink is absorbing into the paper. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Clip Studio Paint is a software for making digital art. Clip Studio Paint is made specifically with artists in mind, so there are features in there that help you make better art, from concept art to manga and webtoons, and for me, animating. I personally love doing a lot of line art heavy stuff in Clip Studio Paint because I think it just looks the best and it's also the easiest to work with. So if that sounds good to you and you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below to try it out for free on any device. Next up is a brush pen. This is the Pentel Color Brush. Replicating the feel of this is going to be an important factor. I use it for both line drawing and filling in larger black areas in my other drawings. And if you look really closely at the scan, you see that there's some texture to the ink which I find very appealing. So I really want to make sure I get that right. Okay, check this out. I think I've done a pretty good job. And I even got this texture. It's so good. It's so good. Okay, I'm getting carried away. So before I even go on to the other tools, let's just try and make a drawing with just these two brushes and see what that looks like. I'm just really excited, honestly, to just start drawing with these. So let's do that. So here I'm using the 3D model function of Clip Studio Paint, where I can just drag and drop in a 3D model from my library, and then from there I can just shape and pose the figure however I want, and also adjust my camera angle so I can use as a reference to draw over. This is really great for me because I am particularly not very proficient in human anatomy, so it's nice to just not have to worry about that and then work on purely the design of this character. So the gel pen is basically what I use in 90% of the drawings that I do on paper. And I'm hoping that's the same case for digital as well. So it's really important for me that this, especially this one, felt right and also looked right. And later I used the brush pen to just fill in some dark shadows, some cast shadows, and little ambient occlusion spots in the drawing. And also I used it in gray ink because it's digital, you can change it to whatever color you want. And then just shade in some darker parts of the character. Can I just say that this is a very uncomfortable way to draw? Give me some credit. POV, you're a YouTuber trying to get close-up B-roll content. Okay, it's time to introduce you to my next tool, the TWSBI Eco EF. This is a fountain pen with an extra fine nib. The main advantage this has over the high-tech is that it is a little bit thicker and I can use whatever ink I want in it. The inks that I particularly like using are lighter colored inks because I love the way it pools and shades in certain areas. So that's something that I really want to recreate in Clip Studio Paint. Before I got started on this next drawing, I actually used the pencil tool in Clip Studio Paint to do a preliminary sketch. I didn't feel a need to recreate anything because first of all, I don't really draw in pencils, and second of all, the pencil tool in Clip Studio Paint is already really good. One thing I really like about the pencil tool is that it has tilt controls. So when I tilt the stylus, it creates a different kind of line like a real pencil does. For the line art of the next drawing, I used a blue ink, which I like. It's my favorite color of ink to draw in, and it shows off that lighter color ink on paper look that I was talking about. And to be fair, I think I did a pretty good job of recreating that effect. Another thing that I wanted to recreate is the effect of the ink getting darker as you layer more strokes on top of each other, which sounds like a trivial thing, but I find that it's something that is very often overlooked. So obviously one of the biggest advantages of working in Clip Studio Paint is the ability to undo and redo your lines, and also free transform them and warp them and stretch them in ways to get it to be just right. However, I do want to stay faithful to my traditional way of working, so I try to do that as little as possible, but it's nice to know that you have the security of having that as an option. And last but not least, the dip pen, more specifically the Browse 361 nib. It's the dip pen that I use the most, and I really love the way it feels and looks. I painted a custom shape for the brush because there's a specific texture in there, like a little bit of graininess to the edge of the line that I want to try and replicate. And obviously the feel of the pen is very important. There's a certain bounciness to the nib and the line variation that I want to make sure that I get as accurate as possible. For the feel part, it's going to be really something specific to my tablet. I'm using an XP Pen Artist 16, and if you're going to download the brush pack and use it for yourself, you're going to have to go into the pressure sensitive curve and adjust it to suit your liking. But that's the thing I like about Clip Studio Paint, is that it is so flexible that you can customize it to suit whatever your needs are. So I really love using this dip pen for the organic shapes. So for this particular drawing, I'm looking at the cables. It has a really nice feel to it, and I think it just softens out the drawing a little bit. And lastly, I just shaded it in again with the brush pen tool in grey ink. Here's the last thing I want to do with these digital brushes. I have with me here this drawing on my sketchbook that I think is really cool, but unfortunately I ran out of space to finish up the rest of the character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan it and then bring it into Clip Studio Paint and finish up the rest of this drawing using the digital equivalent of the tools that I use to draw this guy. After scanning the drawing into my computer, I did some adjustments just to clean up the scan and prep it for drawing. Clip Studio Paint is awesome. There's so many functions in here that I just thought to myself, why hasn't anyone put this into a program just yet? And one of them is to convert brightness to opacity, which means that if you have a black line art on a white paper, you can actually extract your line art out onto a transparent layer so you can paint underneath your line art layer, which is something that I've been wanting as a function for so long, and now I have it. So the primary line art tool I use here is the fountain pen in blue ink. So I tried my best to match the color of the original blue ink, which is a little bit difficult because of the noise generated when you're scanning an image. So I just tried to match it as close as I could. And I think it doesn't really matter too much because you can always make adjustments after the fact using image correction like levels or hue and saturation. Overall, I'm really happy with how these turned out. These brushes are going to be a game changer for me, and I'm really excited to try using them in my professional work. I think it's just going to make drawing more fun and natural. And yeah, I think ultimately that's the goal for me, which is to bridge the gap between my physical drawings and my digital drawings, because sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, but when I make a digital drawing, it feels so different to what I could do and make on a piece of paper. So I think this is a step in the right direction. A big thank you to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to try out any of the brushes that I've made in the video, there's a link in the description for you to download it, so go check it out. And if you do end up making stuff with it, I would love to see it. So tag me on Twitter or Instagram. Are there any tools that you'd like to see recreated in Clip Studio Paint? And if so, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching.